So I just saw the new Harmony Korine film Beach Bum starring Matthew McConaughey, and it was decent. Now, Harmony Korine is a very interesting director. He started out as the writer of Kids, then he wrote and directed Gummo, Julian Donkey Boy, Mr. Lonely, Trash Humpers, and Spring Breakers. I'm always interested in seeing films from him because even if they're not great, they're at least interesting and weird, and this newest film certainly delivered in that sense. It was pretty bizarre and unconventional, the characters were very strange, but unfortunately the story didn't really have a great structure. Oftentimes it felt as though the film was meandering without anything really moving along. Matthew McConaughey was certainly an interesting choice to play this character, but it did get kind of old pretty quickly. Zac Efron did a surprisingly great job playing his character. Although he wasn't really in the film all that long, his scenes were definitely memorable. The worst performance in the film was from Jonah Hill, and it was kind of surprising because he's grown to be a pretty respectable actor, but unfortunately in this film it was really difficult to see him as his character. His accent was really inconsistent, and his presence was more or less annoying. Every other performance was fine for what it was. Snoop Dogg essentially just played Snoop Dogg. When comparing this film to Spring Breakers, this is not nearly as entertaining from both a critical standpoint and a guilty pleasure standpoint. No one's performance in this film matched that of James Franco in Spring Breakers. This movie didn't have nearly as many interesting visuals and vibrant colors. Spring Breakers is a movie that I could watch several times, but I don't know if I'll watch this one again. This film is only an hour and a half, but it felt like 2 hours while watching it. I did still enjoy it overall, and I don't regret seeing it. There are several scenes in the film that are memorable and outrageous, but after having some time to think about this movie, there's really not all that much that stuck with me. Coming out of the movie, I rated it a 6 out of 10, but I think I'm gonna go with a 5 right now. If you're a Harmony Korine fan, then definitely check this out, and if you want to see a unique film that's unlike anything else this year, then check this out as well. And I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. I know I already said that, but whatever. Another film I saw was the new Claire Denis film, High Life. Now, the only other film that I've seen from Claire Denis was White Material, which I enjoyed, but I wasn't really wowed by. She's one of those directors that gets tons of critical acclaim, and on paper I should really like, but maybe I just haven't seen the right movies yet. High Life is a film that many people were telling me to see, insisting that it's one of the best films of the year, and I can see why some people really enjoy this movie, but it just was not for me. It is very interesting and unconventional. It's very well shot with interesting framing and colors, but there were also plenty of points where the production value of this film felt like it was more or less a TV movie. Some of the effects in this film are just plain bad. Some of the effects look like they were done by one person in Flash. I've read a few reviews from people that really love this film, and the general consensus seems to be that they appreciate it less as a science fiction movie and more as a study into human behavior, and I really wanted to get that experience out of it, but unfortunately I wasn't able to at all. We don't know how any of these characters acted before they were in space, so there's no real transformation. There are some characters that do some pretty terrible things, and it feels as though we're supposed to interpret that it's a product of the environment they're currently in, but the characters in this film are all death row inmates anyway. They probably did those same things before they were in space. Juliette Binoche plays the only character who was not a death row inmate, and it's very difficult to understand what her motivations are. She is a doctor who is fixated on successfully creating a child through artificial insemination while in space, but that doesn't really have anything to do with the mission that we were told they were on. It's clear that she's obsessed with this, but we never really understand why. The way that certain information was delivered in this film was just plain sloppy at best. The way that we learn the premise of the film was just so bizarre. Basically, the entire movie takes place on this spaceship, and then they just cut to 2 random characters on a train, and they explain the premise of the film to each other as though they're not just talking to the audience, and then we never see them again, and the rest of the movie continues in space. Not only was it really out of place and distracting, but both of these actors were terrible. It was a questionable choice and a bad scene. The film also shows a long and drawn-out scene of Juliette Binoche's character masturbating. Essentially, the ship is equipped with a special masturbation room. Essentially, it's just a small room in the ship with a saddle you can sit on so you can get rammed by a dildo, and apparently every character but one is addicted to this, including the male characters. Are they implying that every male character goes in that room to get rammed by a dildo? I mean, there's nothing morally wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure that most guys aren't into that. They put a lot of focus onto this aspect in the film, but I really don't see any purpose to it. There are concepts in this movie that are introduced but don't really seem as though they hold any value. The drugs that she gives the male inmates in exchange for their semen sample principles is just brought up but then never really explored again. Many of the conflicts in this film just seem goofy or convenient. There's an important event in the film that only takes place because some of the characters are tied to the bed and some aren't, but we never really understand why that's the case. I get that this is a film that's trying to be more about the characters than the actual mechanics of how everything works, but as someone who found it difficult to get interested in these characters, it was really difficult not to think about certain things, like how apparently everyone on this ship is knowledgeable enough to be operating the entire thing by themselves. It doesn't really seem like any individual there is necessary. Why does the ship shut off life support if you don't check in with it every 24 hours? Again, I really wanted to like this movie, but there's just so much about it that didn't work for me. The aspects of the film that were left vague gave the impression that I was supposed to be mystified and impressed by it, but it honestly seemed pretty predictable in that sense. As soon as you're given the plot, you know exactly how this movie is going to end. I really liked this film visually for the most part. I liked that it was an interesting take on the science fiction genre. It had some interesting music choices. Robert Pattinson did a great job performing his character. Juliette Binoche was great as always. I should mention that there was an actor that did a pretty terrible and annoying job near the end of the film as well. Overall, it's a film with a decent setup, but they really do not explore it in ways that would be interesting to me. Anyway, check this film out if you want. Some people love it, but it's definitely not for everybody, and I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Hey everyone, just wanted to give a quick update on the larger projects I'm working on. I've still got a lot of work to get done on the 2007 list, so I decided to work on a kind of mini YMS review type of thing. It's pretty different from what you'd expect, but I like to change things up a little. I've got a lot of poorly timed commitments coming up later in the month, so I'm trying to get this done before then. I got approved for Cannes Film Festival again, so I'm attending that. I'm also going to be out of town for a family member's memorial, and it's kind of important that I'm attending that. Basically, I'm going to be all over the place for a couple weeks in the second half of May and beginning of June. I'll be bringing a voice recorder so I can record quickies for the films I see while I'm out of town, and I'll be bringing a bunch of movies I need to watch for my 2007 list as well. Who knows, you might not even notice and the content might come out just as frequently, but I'm just giving you a heads up anyway because I might be a little preoccupied during that time. The mini YMS review thing will be finished before I leave, and I'll also be recording a new commentary track as well. Anyway, just trying to keep you guys in the loop and letting you know that I'm working hard to make sure that there's no huge gaps in content. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.